What's going on, guys? We did it. We cracked the code, officially cracked the code on growing amazing apples. And I'm here to report because we were about ready to chop this tree down. We said we're gonna give it one more year based on your feedback. And you said, don't chop it down, be very aggressive and try to learn from your mistakes. We learned a lot, we applied a lot. I'm gonna share with you what we applied because we got beautiful, absolutely gorgeous apples. Wow. All right, so the first thing we did is we called up local professionals. Obviously, we thought we knew what we were doing, but turns out we didn't know anything. And so the first thing I wanna encourage you guys to do is to talk to local farmers, especially local farmers, because not only are they gonna have varieties and tips that are regionally specific to where you're growing, but also they're usually gonna have a wealth of information when it comes to just growing in general. And what's awesome is a lot of these farmers, they don't gatekeep the information. They just wanna share it. Especially older farmers, I find, are way more open books when it comes to information, especially if you say, hey, I'm just a home gardener, I'm struggling. You obviously are doing really well. What are you doing? And so it's not like it's a competitor trying to come in and take their business. You're just really trying to kind of glean some of that information from them. And I find so often, I'll bring them, a bag of zucchinis or some farm fresh eggs or something like that from one of our friends. And they're more than welcome, or they're more than happy to share that information with you. And so the first thing we did is we talked to a farmer named Ray. He owns a U-pick farm about 20 miles from here. And we asked him what he was doing. He then asked us what we were doing. We compared, and we really made a lot of changes based on Ray's advice and his experience growing for over 40 years in U-pick. The first thing that Ray asked us is if we were culling. Now, culling is the process of taking off smaller fruits or reducing the number of fruits. So there's more energy being allocated to a fewer number, obviously. If the tree can only sustain, say, 200 apples and you have 400 apples, you're gonna need to take off 200 apples because it can only hold on to 200. If it holds on to all 400, there's gonna be some sacrifices made. Yeah, it might hold on to that many, but they're all gonna be undersized or misshapen, small. They're not gonna be the nice, beautiful apples that you could be getting. And so I told him, I said, yeah, we're culling. But he said, how many times are you culling? I said, we really only cull in the very beginning. We cull basically right when the fruits start to form, we'll take off about 20% of the fruits. He said, oh, that's good. But are you culling anything after that? I said, no. He said, you should be culling up to 1 month before the fruit ripens. So basically these right here, these apples, they're gonna be ripening in right around, these are a summer crisp apple, they're gonna be ripening right around mid-August, just about where we're at right now. So a month prior to that, we should be doing the final culling, which is where we take off any additional undersized fruits and really leave about, he considered a phone call away. I loved that, Ray, if you're watching, I loved that analogy. Fruits should be kept about a phone call away, right? Easy way to remember it, such an awesome way. And we did an okay job, Ray, I hope I didn't disappoint you. Some of these, we did not leave a phone call away. But I'll tell you what, the ones that are a phone call away are like absolutely amazing. The ones we didn't do quite as good on, there's some smaller ones we could have probably culled, right? But still, this is huge progress from where we were. So keep your apples a phone call away. That's the first thing you want to do with culling the fruits. The second thing Ray asked us if we were doing was spraying for pests. And we said, yeah, we're spraying for pests. He said, when are you spraying for pests? I said, well, we're spraying for pests. That's a nice one, by the way. Wow, it's beautiful. I said, well, we're spraying for pests in early season, typically right after blossom drop. He said, good, that's good. You should be spraying about right after blossom drop. How much more are you spraying? I said, well, not a ton more after that. He said, well, there's your problem. Spray every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, regardless if it's organic or inorganic, spray every 2 weeks. And that's because what he finds is that the pest life cycle of a variety of pests that attack and actually will harm your apple production are roughly about 1.5 to 2 weeks of most pests. And so if you spray, you might miss a life cycle, but when you follow up with another respray, you're gonna hit that life cycle. And it's all about just reducing the pests. And the reason why you do it after blossom drop is because, much like us, he grows organically. And so he does not spray with harmful chemicals, but even organic chemicals, which are considered quite safe to use, still can affect things like honeybees. And so he does not spray his apple trees before blossoms form or as they're forming. Once they fall off, the honeybees are no longer interested. with apple trees because there's no flowers for them to pollinate. And so after blossom drop, he starts to apply, and he does it every 2 weeks. And what he recommended us to do is a combination of BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. That covers a lot of your tent caterpillars and your little grubs and worms that will get into apples and start to pupate inside of the fruit. And then come August, that's what pops out and actually starts to form. We sprayed every 2 weeks with BT. And he said, don't just stop there. What you will also want to do is spray an insecticidal oil. And so we got an insecticidal oil from Dr. Bronner's. I'll try to remember to link it, but that's what we used, was Dr. Bronner's. We sprayed that down every 2 weeks as well. We combined that with the BT. There's no ill effects with combining the two. And what that does is the BT kills off any caterpillars or grubs. Past that, the insecticidal soap will help to coat and smother anything like beetles or weevils. Those can actually be coated. They have a hard exoskeleton. They're not affected. Their young larval stage are affected by BT, but BT won't even affect the adults at all. And so we sprayed down the insecticidal soap till everything was dripping very densely every 2 weeks. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And I'll let you know it was a lot of work. But I mean, come on, the payoff. We got a payoff finally. After about 7 years of growing apples, it just took a little bit of guts to humble myself down, go talk to a U-pick farmer and say, look, we're not having any luck. I'm about ready to chop these trees down, but our audience says don't chop them down or they're gonna go riot and unsubscribe. So I wanna give it one more shot. And with Ray's help, we sprayed these every 2 weeks and we have such little pests. We're talking probably a 90% reduction in pests compared to previous years. That's incredible. The third thing we asked Ray is how aggressively we should be pruning. Now, we did obviously talk about pruning. That's how we got on that topic, because I was asking him how much he pruned, comparing it to how much I pruned. And he said that we were on the right track with right around 30%, but he said that is just kind of a starting baseline. He said some farmers will prune up to 50% of their tree back if they're finding that a lot of the growth is very lush and basically bushy, right? We were finding that a lot of the growth was very lush and bushy, and we found that even when we pruned 30%, the following season, once it got a lot of new growth, all that new growth basically just clustered up more airflow. And so he said, try getting a little more aggressive. And so in the spring, before the tree broke dormancy, we went out, we pruned the snot out of this tree. I mean, we pruned like crazy. The amount of stuff we pruned out from this center, we started in the fall with 30%. Having talked to Ray, we pruned out probably another 15 to 20% of the tree, down to about probably that 50% mark. I mean, we were so crazy aggressive. And the funny thing is the fact that now the tree has started to grow and grow back and put on all this new growth, you really could hardly even tell how much we pruned out, which is wild over the course of a single growing season, how much stuff has grown out. But it really helps not only conserve energy, but get us that airflow, which is the next part he talked about, which is disease reduction. It really helps to not only form the fruit, allocate energy to beautiful, gorgeous apples like this, but it also helps to cut down on disease, which is a big problem we were having before. All right, the fourth thing he asked me was if we were spraying for disease. I said, yes, we were spraying for disease. Now we use just an orchard spray. And he said, that's good. That's probably what you should be using, especially if you're growing organically. Orchard spray is just a combination of things like pyrethrum, which can affect things like pests, which helps, but it also contains a wettable sulfur, which is kind of just an overall broad spectrum fungicide. And that's a lot of times what diseases affect things like apple trees. You might have something like fire blight. That's just a fungal disease. You might have something like brown spot, rust. There's a lot of different diseases that can affect apple trees, but almost all of them can be cured with just a broad spectrum fungicide. And so Ray said, yeah, you're definitely on the right track, but I'm curious because you weren't spraying a ton for pests. How often are you spraying your apples? I said, well, we're spraying about just the first couple weeks of the season. When things are wet and cold is typically when I'd spray. He said, no. Again, just like pests, you're doing the right thing, but you're only doing 10% of the work. You got to take the rest of the 90%. He said, much like you spray for pests every 2 weeks, spray for fungus about every 2 to 3 weeks. And so what we found is, especially after rain, what we'd follow up with is, again, that orchard spray. Just a broad spectrum fungicide. Copper fungicide would work just fine. Anything with copper or sulfur, something like that, that's going to change the pH of the leaf structure, and following up aggressively to do that. Again, is a lot of work, Absolutely. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, do I think that growing apples on a small scale is worth it? It depends on how much you love apples. For the workload that's required to get nice apples, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. But I'm telling you, the harvest is so worth it because for 7 years, we got nothing at all. And so we followed up every 3 weeks with that orchard spray. And I gotta be honest, like, we have almost no disease. I'm not finding any leaf spot. I'm not finding any fire blight. By this time last year, you can go back in time and watch our old videos when we threatened to cut this tree down. The leaves were tiny, they were crinkled, they were blistered with fire blight, with brown spot, gray mold. Just the amount of disease we had on this tree was just, it was abysmal. It made me so depressed to have this in our home orchard, to the point where it was worth cutting it down and just replanting at that point. But because of Ray's help, I really truly think, and obviously this is one season, I think a lot of this can be attributed to his advice, but one season is not going to be a complete indicator. I'd love to keep applying, but what I can say from my own experience, my own visuals of what I'm comparing to last year, we're talking like 90% improvement in disease as well as less pests. And so with Ray's help, I really think that we're able to take our apple growing game to the next level. I want to thank Ray so very much for your support, for your wisdom, and for sharing that knowledge with me. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you all learned something new. If you would, let Ray know in the comments box down below. Thank you. He's 83 years old. He really loves sharing this information, but he just doesn't have technology. He's a great guy. He's a wealth of information. And so if you learned something, let me know in the comments box down below what you learned, and give apples a try. This is definitely given a rebirth to me loving growing apples. Even though I can't really eat them fully because I'm still kind of allergic to them, they're still amazing. And I love them. I love growing them. I love giving them to the kids. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you all learned something new. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed, consider checking this one out. You'll probably enjoy it just as much. I want to thank you so much for your viewership, because without it, this channel would not be as amazing as it is. If you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. Consider doing that. We upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, rain or shine. And if you need any garden tools, supplies, or seeds, check out MIgardener.com. We got you covered. See you guys in the garden. Bye.